Welcome to another session. I hope you're well, and I hope you are having a great day. I am going to end the week by, summarizing the conversation that I have had over the past 4 sessions. If you haven't seen any of the sessions prior, I think they are very important. But I will draw your attention to the session that I covered yesterday, in which I provided a useful way of understanding the concept that I have been trying to explain this week with regards to intersexual dynamics and the whole thing about ask, the whole thing about price, the whole thing about value and worth. In today's session, however, I'd like to address some things that I perhaps should have touched on, which I didn't. So far, I have been talking about women this week, obviously men playing a part in that process, but my focus has been on the female side. I'd like to juxtapose the female side against the men's and provide a contrast that I think would be useful. So let me encourage you, if you disagree, if you agree, if you have a different perspective to what I share in today's session, please leave a comment and express your positive or negative emotions with by way of the like or the dislike button. Now, in the session I did yesterday, I covered something that I thought was an interesting way of presenting what men are bemused with in the intersexual dynamics, you might say, umbrella of relationships, which and principally, when men talk about a woman's value and the lack of awareness of a woman's value and the price she's asking for, the word price is a difficult concept to wrap your head around, because by associating price with an individual, it's almost as though you're talking about some form of slavery. You know, the question is, are you buying people? And that women are not to be bought and men are not to be bought. Let me say something that I think is necessary. Everything in this world, everything when it comes to interactions between people, everything is bought. The currency of exchange is what varies. Everything is bought. The currency of exchange is what varies. For some people, and in some circumstances, and for certain occasions, money, fiat currency, the pound sterling, the American US dollars, or any other currency in the world is the medium of exchange. In other instances, the currency of exchange is not monetary. It could be patience, it could be the ability to listen, it could be kindness, it could be humility, it could be affection. It can be non-tangible items that are used as a currency of exchange. The whole purpose of relationships fundamentally is to solve a problem. If there is no problem, one or both parties are not needed in that relationship. Let's take it away from sexual dynamics or intersexual dynamics. And let's think about the last time you had a leaky boiler or a leaky radiator, a broken ventilation system. The last time you had an appointment at your dentist. Prior to having a problem, you did not see the need to ring your plumber or your dentist or your serviceman or woman. You did not see the need. You've never picked up the phone and simply said, well, I feel generous today. Let me ring my dentist and just say hello and ask how he or she is doing. We do not extend such courtesy to such people. We only pick up the phone when there is a problem. My teeth hurt, such as I have had this week. I have a leaky boiler and it's becoming a nuisance. There is no heat in the house. The ventilation doesn't work. we pick up the phone and we say, can I get some help? In relationships, the same thing applies. Whether that be, and spare me the details and spare me the garbage that people say about unconditional love. Irrespective of the relationship, whether you're talking about agape, or whether you're talking about phileo, or sterego, every single relationship, or even eros, relationship between a lover and another lover, a person and a sister or brother, a friend, or a divine, there is a price associated with that love. Even for those who believe in the doctrine of either Judaism or Christianity or Islam, there is a price. Something was exchanged. There's always an exchange. There's always a price. Even God's love is not infinite. If not, you only need to read parts of the Old Testament to see how many times he showed the fact that his love was absent. The reason for all of the nonsense I've said so far is to point out that everything has a price. The currency of exchange sometimes is cooperation, is obedience, or some other currency. Now, with that said, in the session I did yesterday, I used 2 clips to illustrate the confusion men have when we hear women talk about their list and what a man has to, the hoops we have to jump through to qualify for a woman's love or for her affection or for access. Now, men do not have the same level of, forgive me for using the word, delusion, for a number of reasons. There is a burden of performance on men. I do not know about you, but from the very moment I was a young, I say young, even the pre-teenage, and I was playing with my peers, very quickly you were corrected. The world checks men and boys when we go out of line. The purpose of having a family is to provide you with the first check and a check process to ensure that when you go out to the world, you're not full of yourself. That's the purpose of a family and having peers in the family. You know, usually your family, your siblings are your first line of, you might say, challenge before you go out to the world. And if you have enough people in your community and in your environment, you get socialized adequately before you go out into the world, so that when you go out to the world, you're representing the family and you do not come across as entitled, as unaware, lacking humility, not having grace, being proud. And what we saw in the 2 sessions the session I did yesterday with the 2 videos, were women who have never really been checked. Now, I said from a young age, I was told, you're not good enough. I was told, you're asking for too much. I was told, be humble. I was told in many words, sometimes words and sometimes body language, but also from my results, I was encouraged to realize that, the world doesn't actually owe me any forgiveness, patience, understanding. The world just is. And I need to provide to the world something greater than what I'm asking for. Now, for those who've done sales, the concept was always consistent. You give, and then you take. You don't take before you give. You give, and then you ask. You give, then you ask. And what we've done in the West, particularly since the 1960s, is we've created what I call emotional, unaware individuals. So much so that in the video we saw, you have women making a list of what they need. Granted, everybody is entitled to their preferences and standards. But surely, I cannot think of one man, irrespective of geography, location, age, who would come up with a list when he's making a list of what he wants in a woman that would exceed perhaps half a dozen items, 6 at the most. And irrespective of what men and where men are in their lives, What they ask for, generally speaking, half of those items are fairly very basic. Most men would say, well, I just want peace. I just want some form of cooperation and some form of coexistence, meaningful, peaceful coexistence with a woman. I like to have fun. And there could be 2 or 3 other things, such as I like her to be attractive. In other words, I like her to stay and remain physically attractive to me. Have some discipline about your physique, and have some discipline about your appetite. And can you meet my needs? The needs are not necessarily outrageous. They're usually very core, basic needs. Men are very simple. We don't ask for too much. The reason being, the world tells us from a young age that it's important to stay humble. Women, unfortunately, do not have this burden of performance. A woman can go through life, and let me rephrase this. If a man is ignorant and remains ignorant, there is a huge performance expectation put before him, and there is a huge penalty if he avoids to shoulder that performance expectation. Women, on the other hand, can go through life, get to age 30, 40, and 50, and just be as ignorant as they were when they were 16. Because the world, generally speaking, does not place a burden on women to think, to grow, to be introspective, to sacrifice, to dedicate their lives to something greater than themselves. So much so that when it comes to intersexual dynamics, you could have women make a list of things that they want from a man. And it boggles the mind as to who will meet this list. In any case, everyone has a choice. Everyone has the right to choose. So, now, I find it fascinating, particularly that as women age, particularly when they get between 30 and 40, for some reason, their list of ask is almost 3 times what it was in their 20s. In other words, younger women ask for less, despite and though deserving of more from their preferences. But older women ask for more despite having a lower value in the sexual marketplace and a lower sexual marketplace value and a lower reproductive fertility value, and for the most case a lower non-sexual marketplace value than younger women. I find it very fascinating how you can be worth so much more and ask for so little, or ask for just enough. And you juxtapose that with someone else who is worth very little compared to you on a relative basis, but they're demanding so much more. And I think fundamentally part of the reason in the West there is a stagnation of relationships, and there are more women on psych meds, and there are more women, as reported by the Office of National Statistics, ONS. The data is available. This is not my opinion. The data says there are more women from 30 years and above on antidepressants. There are more women between 30 and 50 on antidepressants, and that number is growing at a rate far in excess of the population growth in the female population. Part of that reason is because we are living as individuals. We do not have meaningful relationships. We've lost the sense of community. We've lost the sense of cohabitation and getting along. We've lost the sense of interdependency. And the reason for all of that is because we have been raised to be very selfish. We've been raised to have very little empathy for the opposite side. It's almost as though, and I use this phrase, narcissism has been studied from a male lens. And so when you hear people talk about narcissism, what you see and hear is what has been studied for many years. There was a time when, to use the word narcissistic, 99.9% of the people identified were men. Since the 60s, what we haven't done is we haven't studied narcissism from the female's lens. I submit. And the data shows that only about 3% of men worldwide will fall within the clinical diagnosis of narcissism as we understand the word based on a male's perspective. So if you took the definition of narcissism, lacking empathy or lacking emotion, only about 30% of men will fall in that category. My position, this is an opinion, is that if you were to look at narcissism as it should be, but also from the female lens, because we've had the liberal movement and the progressive movement that has changed people so much so that everybody thinks that they are the solar system. Everybody looks internally. It's all about me, me, me. We've raised people to be almost narcissistic, what I call inverse narcissism. I think about 60% of women in the West will fall into that category. You hear things such as my truth, my belief, my experience, speaking truth to power, manifestation, my lived experience. Everything is about the individual. Any statement made that suggests that there is an experience contrary to the individual's perspective is seen as an attack on self, is seen as not valid. You have people arguing about whether opinions can be wrong, people not being able to distinguish between perspectives and opinions, people substituting opinions and anecdotal experiences for facts and data and statistics and truth. Truth has now become subjective, and there is no objective measurement for truth. Why? We'll raise 3-4 generations to only think about themselves. And so in the videos I presented, you saw women talking about what they wanted from men. And I take no issue with the list. You can have whatever you want. But as I saw and I looked at that list, and I looked at the individuals asking for that much, I couldn't help but ask the question, do these people have a mirror? And do they look at a mirror every morning? Now, women do a horrible job in advising other women. I genuinely think any woman who wants to be successful, once she gets to about 14, should listen to men more so than women. Because there's so much ego padding. Nothing is said to the woman at a young age to correct her. It's all about making sure she feels good. So much so that we do as a service that most women, the moment they hear a man speak, is misogynist, is narcissistic, is sexist, is dominant, is the sky is falling. They find other people to cancel the person speaking. Why? A lot of these women were raised without fathers in the house. So most of them have no appreciation of how a man speaks. They want men to speak like women, all in the feelings. Now, I've gone through all of that long-winded conversation or monologue to say something. For some reason, younger women in the West are more humble and are more appreciative of the brokenness of everyone, and therefore when demanding of a mate, they have expectations that are more consistent with their sexual marketplace value and their reproductive value, reproductive fertility value. Older women, on the other hand, 30 and above, between 30 and 40, for some reason, that's when I get to see the longest lists. Now, there's a correlation between a woman's education and her success. In other words, her economic intrinsic value. There's a correlation between that and her list. Women who are educated, professionally educated, as they climb the academic qualification, you might say benches. So you go from bachelor's to master's to PhD to or PhD or doctorate to say a fellow. What you tend to find is the list of expectations increases. These women forget that men do not choose women based on your earnings, your education, your intelligence, or your wealth. You find these women recognizing that they do not have as much of the sexual marketplace value or the reproductive fertility value or the non-sexual marketplace value, and they're trying to substitute it with the economic intrinsic value. I understand, big acronyms. Let me make it simple. You find women, SMV, who are not as attractive because they do not have the youth that they once had, and not as appealing because they don't have the fitness or the physique to go with what men want, SMV. They don't have the age. They've gone past a certain age, sometimes post high-risk pregnancy, and therefore they do not have the ability to compete with younger women from a perspective of giving a man what he wants, should that be childbirth. These women are no longer feminine. I move into the non-sexual marketplace value reference. Their character is wavy. Their decorum is to be questioned. They don't have a servant spirit. They don't have gratitude. There's a sense of entitlement. These are not, their software is no longer feminine, it's more masculine, it's more aggressive. Why? Because they have got to go out to the marketplace and compete in a man's world. Women are by nature agreeable. Men are by nature disagreeable, which is why we take risks. Now, to compete in a man's world, you have to compete against men, and men do not play the game of you can take me and you can take all the spoils. Men simply say, if you want to compete, all is fair in love and war. Well, what you find is these women have to develop and take on masculine traits to be able to compete and be successful economically. And therefore, the attitude that comes with being masculine or competing in a masculine environment is transferred into their personal relationships. And therefore, what you find is these women, as they age and as they lose more of what men want, they hold on to more of what they have, especially when they have no relationships. So you tend to find when a woman does not have a masculine presence in her life, a lover, a husband, she holds more to her career. Her career becomes a second husband. She dedicates her life so much to that she realizes that she is very successful, and her peers, which include men, find her to be successful. But she translates that into the fact that the men she competes with in the professional landscape have the same qualities or attitude as she does, make the same amount that she does, and therefore those men are attracting a lot of women, and she believes that there is a symmetry in male and female attractiveness, and therefore she can demand the same thing the man will demand and more, because she has the qualification and education, and she also has the looks. And what you tend to find, and this is a statement that should be remembered, as men age, the younger we are, we have less of what women want, the ability to provide and protect. So the younger the man is, the less he qualifies for a woman's beauty. Beauty has a cost. Younger men do not qualify in the aggregate for beauty because they cannot afford it. The value exchange is not there. Hence, you find that young men have to go and learn things like game, the art of play, the art of seduction. Why? Young men go and learn how to look good physically, lift weights, so they have muscles, and they have an art form to use words. Older men, on the other hand, as men mature, they don't need game. As they grow up, they come into their manhood, and they learn about life, and therefore they can communicate with confidence because they found their purpose, they're doing well financially, and they know who they are. They don't have to pretend like young men. So, as a man ages, he has more of what women generally want. The reverse is, as women age, they have less of what men want, which is beauty, fertility, youth, chastity, decorum. Unfortunately, with men, we are conditioned from a young age to be careful about what we ask, because the world gives us a punch in the face when we ask for too much at a young age. The world simply says, you're not good enough. You have nothing. Be humble. Be grateful. As we go through life and as we grow, we hold on to that humility so that when you meet men, as they journey from 18 and go into 30, 40, and late 40s, 50s, there's still that humility, despite actually having a much higher sexual marketplace value from an economic perspective, not from a physical perspective. We have more, but we're still humble, which is why you can see a man who is wealthy, and he doesn't actually brag, and he doesn't have a sense of entitlement, because he started well. Women, on the other hand, at 18, you're giving all of your value. You have all of this metamorphosis happening to your body. Every man is looking at you, your breasts, your bum, your hips. You're changing your hair. And billionaires are saying to you, you can have X and you can have Y. Everybody's giving you stuff. You walk into a supermarket, and someone pays for your bills before you pull out your credit card or your debit card. And this creates a confusion because women have a sense of entitlement. They freeze this entitlement. It's like a frozen tradition. They freeze this entitlement as they journey through life, refusing to recognize that beauty starts to degrade and diminish. And when they get to 30, which is at the same time a man is peaking in his intelligence and his achievement, a woman is peaking in her intelligence and achievement. So it's almost like a double whammy. She has the frozen idea of who she used to be at 18 or 22. That value, she holds onto that value. And then she also then has the economic value to add, to boot. And then suddenly she thinks, I can ask for so much more. The mistake is men come to the table and they look at a woman's sexual marketplace value. Firstly, how she looks. And in exchange, man is presenting his economic intrinsic value. And you have this confusion because women are saying, well, I'm intelligent, I'm successful, he should be happy to have me. And men are saying, I will not buy. You then have an unequal exchange. And whenever there is an unequal exchange, there is no trade, there is no transaction, there is no sale. A woman, based on her lists, determines or identifies to the marketplace what her price is. A man will look at that list and say, well, I think this is an unfair deal. This is too much. But, and here perhaps is the most important part of what I'm hoping to share today. There's a fraud that takes place in the dating scene. I have talked about this previously. Dating is like a scam. Many young women do not know. Men are shunned who reveal the game. Let's assume I am 22 and I meet a woman who is 22. At the point of meet, I have nothing to offer her, just potential. At the point of meet, she has all of her value, beauty, youth, chastity, even virginity, everything. So she is much more valuable and the balance of power is on her side. Her expectations may be a list of 10. What men do, therefore, is they simply listen to a woman's ego needs. And they become a chameleon, trying to fit into all of those needs and present themselves in a manner that allows the woman to give the man the keys to the vault. A woman is a gatekeeper to her emotions, her body, and her womb. The man wants that key. In the dating marketplace, dating for men means men are looking for sex. In the relationship marketplace, relationships for men mean men are looking for marriage. Long-term, something sustainable. But in the dating marketplace, because of our need for sex can be so strong. But the younger we are, the little we have to exchange. So we have to learn how to speak well, how to be humorous, entertaining, perhaps sometimes how to speak different languages. We have to learn the art of game. But at the core part of what we're doing is we're trying to study women to understand their ego needs. So I go out on a date at 22, I listen to the woman, and I feed back to her what I think she wants to hear. I do that based on what I've heard her say. Or when I want a man who loves cats, a man who would like to adopt a dog, a man who believes in saving the planet. And she goes on, because women have been trained for many years to only think about themselves. A man can go on a date and say very little about himself. A woman goes on a date. And because we've raised a lot of women to be focused on themselves, to believe that they are the solar system and the whole planetary system revolves around them, they start to talk about what they expect. They start to present their expectations, their standards, and their demands. And men recognizing the younger we are, we have no value in terms of economic intrinsic value and only potential. We have to play an art and play an act. So we take whatever we hear and we pretend that that's who we are. We say things such as, I do this and I do that and I've done this and I own this. It's all game. Why? Because of the unrealistic standards women have. So when you hear from women say men are dishonest, well, dishonesty is not a cause. You have to think it's an effect. You have to study the cause. The cause is we've removed the traditional values and we've said to women you can be sexually liberated. But we've also said to women, you're equal to men. But we've also said to women, well, we want you to hold on to the traditional benefits of the old, and we want you to hold on to the new benefits of the modern. So men are saying, well, this is unequal. I can be a gentleman. I can show chastity. I can bring you flowers. But I expect you to be consistent with what would have been the traditional expectations from a woman. Chastity, the virgin's price, and you still being untouched. But in the marketplace, women are not playing fair game. So men are simply saying, fine, we'll learn the art of the game. We'll take your demands. We'll play to such demands. Because in dating, I use the word war. Dating is like war. So the victor goes the spoils. All is fair in love and war. It's not a moral statement. It's not a value judgment. It's just a statement of a fact of what women have requested for. You wanted the sexual marketplace to be deregulated. You wanted freedom, liberation, sexual freedom, sexual liberation. This is what you get. Men are simply adapting to the rules that have been set by the modern women. And so what you then have is men playing the game. Now, the point I was trying to make is a simple one. A lot of the expectations of women, whether they are 20, in their 20s or 30s or 40s, they have to be careful because an artist learns how to win. And men understand that a way into a woman's heart first is with words. So he will become a chameleon and say whatever is necessary. In the dating marketplace and at the early stage of a relationship, all he cares about is having that sexual need met. At the point where you identify your price in your list, a man does two things. He says he believes you are in one category or another category. Sex only, sex sustenance, and long-term. So one category, he says, these are wives. Wives don't ask for such things. On the other hand, he says, these are fun girls, people I can play with. Now, the women you saw in the videos can only be side chicks to the men they desire. Why? Because they were not groomed or raised or taught to be wives. They're not feminine women, because to be such, you have to ask for less. Not because you can't ask for more, but because you have the humility and you've been raised to understand, to see the humanness in people. Most women do not see men as humans. As a matter of fact, we've actually raised a generation of men and we've sold them on the best. I think this perhaps has to be the best trick ever pulled in the world. We convince men to go out to the world and slay the dragon and earn as much money in the process that other people will spend whilst we die, either prematurely, early, or before our time. Talk about a concept that is bought across the world. You're the hero, and you'll get a hero's badge when you're dead. So men go out into the marketplace and they labor and they slave themselves, and someone else spends the money whilst we die. What a game. What a great proposal. Men are simply saying, we don't mind taking that challenge, but can you treat us fairly? Can you treat us in good faith? Can you come to the table with something that is resembling an equal or similar exchange? Whenever men feel that the proposal from the woman and the price is far lower than her value, what you will have is sexual interaction, but it will never proceed past on sexual interactions. It will never translate into long-term success in a committed relationship of a profound nature with emotional significance. There is no benefit to modern men in the West for marriage. Everything that used to come with marriage, we can get it outside of marriage. So in order for men to make that leap, most men are doing a very serious analysis, a cost-benefit analysis, recognizing all the pitfalls. In the UK, 7 out of 10 divorces that are filed by women. Of the remaining 3, half of that are actually instigated by the woman and requested to be filed on her behalf, but by the man. So about 15% of the divorces filed in the UK are done by men. Men do not lead. That's a disadvantage. In the event of a divorce, the man loses half his wealth. So effectively, you're signing up for 7 to 8.5 out of 10 times she leaves. At the point she leaves, you lose half your entire wealth, irrespective of what her contribution was to the family. In addition to that, if he is reproduced and have children, only in 10 out of 100 would he have access to his kids. 9 out of 10 times, the woman gets full custody of the children, and he has visitation rights, if any. Now, I can keep going on and on. The family court system in the UK is entirely appalling. There are no benefits of marriage to a man. Now, I still believe if you want to have children, that is the right way to do it. In the institution of a married relationship, I believe that between two people, male and female, man and woman, make it very clear. And to make it clear, just so there are no confusions, men do not have any benefits. So when a man meets a woman, and the woman is looking for a relationship, and she's come with a long list of items she wants as a precondition, as a prerequisite, he sits there and he says, recognizing all of these disadvantages that I will accrue, or that are being accrued to me, is she worth the squeeze? If the answer is no, because men are cost-benefit calculators. Now, ladies, I'm giving you game. If the answer is no, a man has to make a conclusion. Do I walk away from the interaction immediately, or do I get my money's worth? Now, at that point in time, perhaps he's gone on a date with you, and he simply thinks, well, I just paid about £40 for her meal. But he must have worked to earn £80 to be able to afford £40 spent. So he thinks, but from his earnings, he only saves 10% of what he earns. So we do the numbers. If he spent £40 on a meal for you, just £40, something cheap and affordable. The question is, how much of what he earned did he have to save? If it was 10%, then it means he had to have earned about £400. 10% was saved, and therefore he was able to spend £40 on you. But if he made 400 quid, in order to pay all the taxes and the overheads for the business, he would have had to have earned about £800, for which he keeps half of that, roughly. So we go back and ask a simple question. How much does he make every hour? Let's assume he makes just £10 per hour. To have made £800, he would have worked. If you divide 800 by 10, 80 hours. So, technically speaking, what that's implying is he's worked for 2 whole weeks to be able to pay for your meal. Now, from a man's perspective, he's thinking, well, 2 weeks is all of my life aggregated into days across 2 weeks. My sweat, my blood, my time, my emotions, everything that I am. The moment he pays for your meal, he's thinking, well, I ought to get something in return for all of this hard work. And this is where you see men simply place a number, and they say, well, I'll have sex with her for a number of days, a number of times, sessions, and then I'm off. So a woman starts, and then she behaves, and she sees things that a relationship is going forward. But he's seen your list already, and he said your price is too high compared to the value. And then he places you in the sex-only category, fun girl, play girl, and will never elevate you to the wife category. Seldom do men do that. Once you're in that category, you're there. There are exceptions, but mostly the rule applies. And so after a few weeks or months, assuming it takes 2-3 weeks for him to get what he wants, and all of what he thinks are consistent and compensatory to what he paid, he exits stage left. So I conclude with the following statement. Ladies, you have to understand men. You have to be realistic in your dating standards. And you have to have humility. You must be accountable for the decisions you make, no doubt, but you have to have humility. There is an absence of humility amongst most women. And to understand what men want, you have to think from the perspective of a man. We do not judge you based on your education or your intelligence. Yes, we are superficial. We want beauty. We want youth. We want some form of chastity. We want a feminine woman. We want someone to play with, but someone with a servant's spirit. We're very simple. We're very, very simple. Now, you can come with whatever lists you want. Unfortunately, the unintended consequence of long lists is that the women who have such lists are the ones who actually are gained the longer. Because what men see is someone who is greedy and entitled. And remember, all is fair in love and war. And dating is like war. I hope that's been useful.